Hey there everybody, this is Dr. Brian. Today we're going to talk about a very common question that I get about the nervous system, especially when I am sharing a report of findings with a patient. One of the first things I get is, how long is this going to take, right? For me as an individual, that's an important question. It's a fair question. And it makes sense from someone who is stressed out already, right? Because we want to know, what am I in for? So it makes a lot of sense. So obviously when it comes to the healthcare field and we're dealing with individuals, it's really hard to give an exact number just as a blanket statement to everybody, right? The more common thing you get when you call up your friend or family who's somewhere in the medical field and you're asking about something, and what do they usually tell you, right? Well, it just depends, right? So kind of ties into this as well. It really depends on a few factors. And so those are the factors I'd like to share with you today, because I think it'll give you some insight into how we go about trying to figure everything out. We're gonna look at 7 factors to be specific, because there's a few things that we have to be mindful of when we're trying to make a decision about personalizing our approach with everybody. Okay, so number 1 is we have to have a good history. Okay, so we have to look at the past patterns, specifically with 3 major areas. Okay, so what kind of stress have you dealt with over the years? And to be clear, everyone has dealt with something, right? Everyone has a story. We've all dealt with ups and downs. That's kind of how life goes, kind of what life is all about, right? So we're not looking to judge anyone on the sense of like, hey, you did bad things, right? But like, what kind of things were you exposed to? And probably more importantly, what was your response to the stress? Okay. Because we all have different responses to things, and that's very telling. So we look at stress, we look at traumas, we look at obvious traumas like car accidents and deaths in the family, and divorces, and just obvious big things. But we also look at something called perceptional trauma and perceptional stress. Okay, so to the individual, what's stirring around in their head, in their processes, and their perception about what's going on in their life, and how are they adapting to their perception of what's going on around them. Because if I talk to 5 different people and they all go through the exact same thing, they're all going to process it and perceive that stress differently. Okay, so we look at stresses and patterns there. We look at traumas. We also look at our past history with toxins. Okay, so this could look like viruses like Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, bacteria like Lyme's disease, right? Mold exposure, parasites, all of these things, environmental toxins. The list is pretty big on this one. All right, so again, we're just looking for a past history, and we want to get enough of a history there because again, we're looking more for like trends and patterns over time around all of these areas. Okay, so not that anyone's like doing anything bad or whatever. We're just looking for the trends and the patterns and the rhythms in their lives, because we want to see flexibility in your nervous system and not this rigid back and forth. Okay, so we look at the past. The next one is we look at the current stuff going on in your life, the current stresses, the current traumas, the current toxins that you may or may not be experiencing or being exposed to. Okay, so we look at those 2, and the current stuff, we do a little bit of a forecasting of like, hey, what are you looking forward to, or what are you anticipating as well? So that does include that as well. Okay, so the next one, medications and supplements. This is an important one. There is a bit of a past history with that, but especially currently, right? Especially like the last 3 months, like what's going on in your life? What kind of medications? What's our medication history? Do we have a large antibiotic usage and exposure history? How long ago was that? Did we recover from that okay, for example, right? And supplements actually do plenty of overwhelm to the body as well. Okay, so here in my office, I'm not anti-med, I'm not anti-supplements, right? There's a time and a place for everything. The question is though, are we doing the right thing at the right time? Okay, so per my scope of practice, I can't tell you to get off any medications, right? But I can have conversations with you about, hey, look, these look like potential side effects to the meds, and how does that play into our story? And how is that affecting our nervous system and our flexibility and response to things? Supplements do the same thing. They take up bandwidth, they take up resources in the body, just like medications do. Both of them are activating different pathways in the brain and the body in different ways. And so this is an important conversation, simply, again, not to shame anyone for doing anything, but I have had patients come in and they're taking like 15 plus supplements a day, spending thousands of dollars on supplements. And so the question becomes at some point, are we over consuming on supplements? Are we over complicating different processes? And I have also had patients who have been on multiple medications through multiple doctors, but no one seems to be communicating appropriately enough to consider, are we cross-contaminating or cross-referencing and having cross-reactions with the different medications. So again, these are just conversations to have because it takes up bandwidth and energy in the body that affects our neurological processes. All right, so just like supplements, we look at therapies. What are you currently doing? How much are you trying to do? Okay, so we have some patients who are very much on the go-getter side. They're really trying to push the envelope of, we got red light, we're doing cold plunges, we're doing meditation and yoga and foot zone, and the list just goes, IVs, I mean, huge stuff, right? So again, the question just becomes not that meds, not that supplements, not that all of these alternative or allopathic therapies are bad. But the question does become more of, are we doing the right things at the right time? Are we over consuming and overexposing ourselves to things? Because that is a possibility that we're overstimulating the nervous system, putting so much input in that the body doesn't have time or resources to actually organize what's going on, and thus makes it harder to get through just the day-to-day stuff. So we look at the medications and the supplements, but also the therapies that you're doing as well. I personally have found that patients do better when they get into me in a very dysregulated state when they simplify and do less to start off. All right, these last three are things that we do here in the office, okay? We do 3 different neurological scans. One is a thermal scan where we literally look at the temperature of the spinal cord on both sides. And what that does is that allows us to see where's the blood flow communicating in and out of the spine, and how does that correlate to the organ functions in the area. Okay, so this is some good data for us as making some decisions with that. The second one that we do in office is called an EMG, electromyography. We're looking at the electrical communication or conductivity of the nervous system through the muscles around the spinal cord. Okay, so this again gives us some good information about how is the information posturally with our muscles, how is the communication between the bottom part of our body coming up to the top, left and right. Okay, so just again, good information of if I'm receiving input over here with bright lights and sounds, okay, I have to perceive that here, but this side of the body also has to help me find balance. So neurologically, all of that does play a role. And then lastly, we have the heart rate variability test. This is where we look at how adaptable, how resilient your body is. If you know much about the fight or flight response, there's the other side of the autonomic nervous system, which is the rest, sleep, and digest. Ideally, we're going in and out of both. We want this flexibility of dealing with stress, but also being able to relax, sleep, digest, and calm down. And so we're looking for a pattern of, in a restful, non-threatening situation, where does my body go? What point of rest does it go down to? Is it staying in a somewhat stressed response, or can it fully relax? And we see patients all over the map on this one as far as severity with the stress, but also some patients are too parasympathetic, which means they're too understimulated as well. So both can cause issues, but again, this is why we look at all 7 of these pieces as we're looking to create a personalized plan for you and your life to reach your goals. So going back to the original question, okay, how long is this going to take? So a generalized timeline for the majority of patients, I feel a good timeline to give yourself to really heal the nervous system and get things to balance out in the general sense, right? Because there's still some fine tuning to do on the back end for most people. And life still is life, life things still happen. And so the ebbs and flows of things, like sometimes when bigger things happen, we might need a little bit more support during or through those big things. And they don't have to be terrible things, right? It could be just like during a wedding, right? As we're prepping and planning for the wedding and all this kind of, and the reception, it's a lot of stress. It's fun, it's good, right? But even through things like that, or major transitions like starting a new school year or anything like that, okay? These are good concepts to keep in mind of like, hey, even though I have a good healthy nervous system, sometimes I need a little extra support. There is nothing wrong with that, okay? But that being said, a good timeline for most of my patients, I think generalized public concept for you to wrap your head around is a good 3 to 6 months of specific nervous system therapies to allow, again, for the majority of your nervous system to get regulated, okay? So I hope that was helpful. I'm here for any questions if you guys have them. See ya.